you're here for this. There is a deep resonance in your heart, the Magdalene, and to the rise of the Magdalene. And so I am very, very grateful for your presence here. And we're going to be diving into a really interesting and passion of mine. When I began to discover what Dr. Joe Dispenza was doing in the HeartMath Institute, and I started to hear that, oh my God, this sounds very familiar to what I'm reading and studying in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. So my tag for this event is Dr. Joe Dispenza meet Mary Magdalene. We're exploring the mysteries of the Nous or the divine mind and understanding the Gospel of Mary and what it's trying to say to us. And I am so excited about this. I have found some of the latest research that is being done by people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and the HeartMath Institute. And this bears out the what is laid out in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is the ascension steps that Mary Magdalene took. And we actually have the book. We have the information, the papyrus of what her process was. So I will be able to show how her awakening process is now being validated by the science. And she really became and is the living demonstration of a fully awakened, what in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene talks about, an anthropos human being. In preparing for this class and the depth and the volume and what it took for me to put the research together, to, even though I've been studying for over 10 years the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and I have a wealth of understanding and research, it's still, this is beyond a level that I've ever really done before. It's like bringing forth the new. It's like birthing a baby, So, because I've never seen anyone do this kind of research of this particular way that you'll see today. So on 10/10/10, I was ordained a priestess of Mary Magdalene in the Lyceum of Sophia. I consider myself a mystic, but I also have a master's degree in clinical psychology. And I did my research really studying the comparative religions and how comparative religions influence the modern day psychology. So I've always been interested in the ancient and the Eastern philosophies and how they match up. And Elizabeth Kelly, who's a priestess of the Holy Order of Mary Magdalene, introduced me to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And she was the one who also ordained me in her Lyceum of the Sophia, which was life-changing for me. It's just like rocked my world and took me to a whole nother level, incredible level of joy. And so Elizabeth introduced me to the gospel. And after my ordination on 10/10/10, I began to have visions. And one of the visions was to have a ceremony. And I saw it plain as day, all the pieces, everything came in, to honor Mother Mary for her consciousness to conceive, light, and birth of God. And a month later, I was standing in a room with 100 people leading this ceremony as if I had always been doing it. And that was my first introduction to the guidance, receiving the guidance and the mysteries of what was being asked of me to become my own sacred self, right? It just brought me to a whole new level of joy and connection with her. And I could feel this shift. So I had a chance to talk to Joseph Rowe. Now, Joseph Rowe translated the Gospel of Mary Magdalene from Leloup's version, which is the one we're using today, which is Gospel of Mary Magdalene. I like this translation because it's more about oneness. There are other great translations out there, but they're more about father-child relationship. And I like the idea that of the oneness and the unified field theory and whatnot. So I went with this particular version, and Joseph Rowe translated Leloup's French, because Leloup translated from Coptic to French, and then Joseph Rowe translated to English. And when I was talking to Joseph, I said to him, this is what my experience has been. What do you think about this? And he looked at me and said, I am a scholar of a pretty high level, and I've translated the Gospel of Thomas and a whole bunch of other works he rattled off that he'd done. And he said, But the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it woke me up. So he was also finding that there was something very powerful in what was being said there. So in the meantime, I'm also a Course in Miracles student, and I'm listening to the Course in Miracles, right? And as I hear in one class one day, the Course in Miracles being read, I'm waiting, I'm listening, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I just read that in preparation for my Gospel of Mary Magdalene class. There it was, word for word, in A Course in Miracles. So I made note of it, and I've got the whole course from beginning to end marked up with every time the Gospel of Mary Magdalene shows up in A Course in Miracles. And that's a whole nother class. So the same thing happened when I started to follow and track the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and the HeartMath Institute. I was like, whoa, I'm hearing the Gospel of Mary Magdalene within their body of work. So something's going on here. So I wanted to really take the chance to doc. And I am so excited to be here with you and to be taking this journey of documenting the Gospel of Mary Magdalene as fast forward to the year 2022, when all these amazing researchers are coming out with their science that basically documents what Mary Magdalene did. We're going to start right out the chute. We're looking at the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the primary fundamental teachings of the Gospel. And so the very first thing that's incredibly important to understand is Mary is talking to the disciples, and they're questioning something. They're like going, wait a minute, what's up here? She seems different. She's like privy to some information that Jesus taught her that he didn't teach us. And how come he didn't teach us? Because he shouldn't be even talking to a woman anyway. I don't understand why Peter is always complaining about why he would let Magdalene in the inner circle. It was like he was just shocked and really did not want to let go of his belief structure that women were less than. So he confronts her and says, I want to know what he taught you. And he does it in a very gentleman way. So everybody thinks, oh, isn't Peter being kind? But he's not doing, he has an ulterior motive as to why he's doing it, because he wants her to spill the beans, so to speak, because he can tell something's happened, but he doesn't have the eyes to see nor the ears to hear. So she tells him the truth. Mary said to them, I will now speak to you of that which has not been given to you to hear. Why? Because Jesus was trying, but they didn't have the ears to hear. And then she goes on, I had a vision. Well, the first clue about this is that meant that she did the inner work. She was paying attention, and she was the one that was sitting at Jesus's feet, hanging on every word, really trying to grok and understand what he was, and taking it in with deep love, deep compassion, open-hearted, wholehearted way. And Martha is like going, what are you doing? Why isn't she not helping me in the kitchen? And Jesus says, no, she's doing the right thing. And so we know that she was really attending to the work of what the master was trying to teach. So then he goes on and he says, this is why I tell you, be in harmony. Now I'm going to be jumping around to different points, but there's a reason for my doing that, because I want to illustrate some things to you that I think will help with clarifying and understanding. So this is why I tell you, be in harmony. Being in harmony means that you're experiencing heaven on earth, that you're in what we would call this wonderful chart that kind of illustrates it, being above the line. Being above the line means that you're in acceptance of what is, you're at choice, you have freedom to love, and from your choice of love, you respond instead of react. You are looking for being 100% responsible, because you understand that you're connected to source, which means you're at cause, because you have a direct connection to source. And so for that, you are able to access clarity. You are able to take actions that are based on real solutions. And I always love it. You'll find out through the course of these classes some of the solutions that I've gotten from being in this process. That was like, wow, I never would have thought of that in a million years, right? But when you tap in, you get the right guidance. And so then life becomes abundant. So you're living in a higher consciousness, creativity, and living energies. This is what we're talking about, the sacred living energies of life. That is so much more fun, you guys. It's like, it's the best to me. Rather than below the line thinking, which is full of judgment and you have to judge, you feel like a victim, you know, you're running on fear, you have excuses, you feel like you failed, you're procrastinating, and everything's a problem. It's like you're feeling at the effect of everything and you want to blame somebody, like it's their fault, or this government did this, and da 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 da, and so you react instead of respond in an appropriate, loving way to things because you're below the line. Well, what I've come to learn from studying the gospel so intensely is that Mary Magdalene was the living demonstration of one who lived above the battlefield. Her gospel, we have so many great examples in it of how she did that. So she was able to master, and she was a real master, that she became an enlightened master, and we began to realize her enlightenment, and that made all the difference in the world. Dr. Joe Dispenza, please meet Mary Magdalene, because she is mirroring what you are teaching your students to do. She did it. She would have been one of your A students. And her living demonstration is indicated in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. The lines are right there, and we're going to go through them. Exactly what you're teaching, she was the living demonstration of that. So this became very exciting because I love bringing science and spirituality together. I love marrying these two worlds, the mystical world, which is what I'm a part of, and the science world. So we're going to take a moment here and listen to what Joe has to say. And I will be providing the links to all of these YouTube videos so you can see the whole video at your leisure and study, take it more into your heart.
You're just thinking equal to everything that you know, and you keep creating more of the same. To change, to truly change, is to think greater than your environment. And every great person in history knew this, whether it was William Wallace or Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Queen Elizabeth I or Joan of Arc. They all had a vision. They all had an idea. Couldn't see it, couldn't smell it, couldn't taste it, couldn't feel it, but it was alive in their mind.
See, and what we need to put on that list is Mary Magdalene, where she had a vision, right? So that is something that is we've totally missed out on, is how her vision was the part of the process that made her an enlightened woman.
It was so alive in their mind that they began to live as if that reality was actually happening now. So can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the event has already happened? Neuroscience says it's absolutely possible. Now, your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. It's that simple. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's sitting here today, you, has created the present personal reality called your life. Would you agree? Would you also agree then, if you wanted to create a new personal reality, that on a fundamental level, you would have to change the thoughts that you are thinking, the behaviors and habits that you're demonstrating, and the emotions that you've memorized that's become.
We're going to stop right there. And because there's a lot that he's already spoken of that we want to take in, but basically it's the thoughts you think, the actions you take, those are the important ones to remember that make up your personality. This one here, what you think
and how you feel.
and how you feel. So, which creates the emotions that are usually, if you're acting below the line, are going to be negative emotions. And they will, when you go into higher thoughts, you create a fluid state of consciousness. And you begin to detach from matter and become what is like a particle or a wave. So as you see this fabric of life, and you see that the little dots are like the particles, and then they go away, and then you become in an elevated, expanded state of yourself. You become more fluid, you become relaxed, and these are almost like what happens with different brain waves that take us to these places. So remember, we saw the sentence, when you're out of balance, how do you get in balance? Take inspiration from the manifestation of your true nature. So take inspiration. We've all had moments of inspiration. I was a little girl. I used to run down to the beach on a full moon night, and we would run up and down the beach singing Broadway musicals and in the glory of this, it was fabulous. And it would give us this elevated sense, and we'd be so inspired. It was so glorious. So you have to remember a time when you manifested an inspired, elevated feeling. So what is, you take inspiration from the manifestation of your true nature, means you have to remember a time when you felt peace and joy. And Joe has a video, which I'm going to show you a clip of, that specifically says you want to access that memory, because accessing that memory is the portal to the field. So how to become supernatural, which we know Magdalene was, right? So.
When you connect to the field, when you connect to the divine, whatever you want to call it, when your consciousness merges with a greater consciousness, and that arousal creates ecstasy, bliss, oneness, whatever you want to call that, you realize that it never came from anything out there. It didn't come from the wardrobe or the facelift, the sports car, or whatever. It came from within you. And so you stop looking out there for it. And now the love affair begins. And you never want to miss a date because it's just too good. So that memory then, that is what I'm after. So that memory then, that is what I'm after. Because when you have those transcendental moments and you understand this, the experience of that transcendental moment lays down new circuitry in the brain. That's what experience does. And the experience produces a feeling, but it's not chemical. It's electric and it's orderly, and every cell of your body is jiggling in an order. And you're aroused and you're awakened, right? You have to admit, when that occurs, your spectrum of reality is going to broaden. Some conditioning, some illusion, something is removed, and you start seeing reality as it is. And all of a sudden, you start seeing the part that we edit out for survival. Now you start seeing patterns and lights and information that are transcendent of three-dimensional reality in your spectrum. Why? Because your brain had the experience and the circuitry's there, and now your experience of the world changes. You get an up.
All right. So that's how we shift and get our world to change from the manifestations of things that we've already manifested in our lives that are held in memory. It was a time we felt happy. Those qualities of peace and love and joy we've all had. And we're attached to matter. We're attached to 3D reality. This gives rise to passion against our nature, our true nature. And thus trouble arises in the whole body because of our attachment, our mental constructed attachment to the matter. These solutions come to you that are perfect because you're connected to source. That is first cause, right? And now we have the science behind that to really help us to understand why. It's like we're going to get above the line. So Joe Dispenza is now joined with HeartMath Institute and doing research on brain and heart coherence, right? That is really awesome research about how to be in the heart, because Magdalene is all about the heart. So when you look at these heart, I guess they're cardiograms, where they're measuring the heart rate, and somebody's in frustration. Oh my God, it's like the heart is definitely not looking good. But when you move above the line into appreciation, gratitude, peace, love, joy, then suddenly the heart becomes coherent. It becomes rhythmic, smooth, easeful, graceful, and it runs more efficiently, and you're saving energy while your system is being restored, because now it's free to release the hormones for healing. Whereas when you're in fight, flight, or flight, that's not a time to try to get creative, right? That's a time to like deal with the perceived threat. So this becomes really important. So we have these different levels of brainwave activity that they measure them all. The gamma, which is intense concentration and learning, is a very high frequency vibration. It's what they call the superconscious. Then you have the beta, which is our waking, problem solve, engaged state, but it can be conscious or unconscious. And there's actually many levels, and he goes into quite more detail about the different levels of beta. And then alpha is when we're starting to relax and recharge, and that now we're dropping into a more subconscious way of operating. So, and our subconscious runs our body. It has received programming. We don't have to think about how to breathe or how the heart beat. And then we go into theta, which is dreaming, autopilot, kind of just taking things. Sometimes when I go shopping, I'm in theta, just wandering the store and in a dream-like state. Oh, I gotta have this, I gotta have that. Not a good place to be. And then of course, delta, we're finally asleep. So another way of looking at it, if we're going from sleeping and we're waking up, you have these windows of opportunity in the theta state, which is very close to some of the experiences that you can have in gamma. Because gamma, when it's fully consciously cultivated and developed through meditation, is really what we were calling the awakened Christ consciousness state of being. So let's go back to this page 7, Gospel of Mary Magdalene. What is matter? And will it last forever? Was the disciples were asking the teacher, and the teacher answered. And he said, all that is born, all that is created, all the elements of nature, earth, air, fire, water, 3D form, reality, are interwoven and united with each other. They're all one. There's no separation. It's all a part of the great all of life. So here is where the quantum things, all the elements of nature, well, the primary element is the atom, right? Electrons and protons and one other spiraling around the nucleus of an atom. But let's take a look at it. For example, we take the element water, which is H2O, right? Let's just take the H part, the hydrogen, which supposedly it consists of a single proton and a single electron. If you take the single proton and measure it, it's like the size of a ping pong ball. In that dimension of size, to see how far away is the electron, it's 4,040 feet away, or 13 and a half football fields away. Now, you probably heard this. So we're really very spacious, folks. There's more spaciousness than anything. So then you have E equals mc squared. It's the world's most famous equation, but what does it really mean? And this is really interesting. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. One of the most basic levels of the equation says that energy and mass are interchangeable. Didn't we just read in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene that it said it's interchangeable? They are different forms of the same thing, which means they're one. Right? Now, if you go to the next level, it's called string theory. This proposes that the smallest unit of matter is composed of tiny vibrating strands of energy called strings. So this is when matter becomes energy. All things, all that is composed shall be decomposed. Everything returns to its root. Matter returns to the origins of matter. Well, what is the origins of matter? We just learned and we just saw E equals mc squared. It's energy, waves, light. So those who have ears, let them hear. So higher thoughts create the fluid state. Intention detached from matter becomes a wave. So in our meditation, in our ability to rise above, when it rises above, it becomes more fluid. And that's why this gamma level is a really outstanding level, because it gets you into being in a vibrational frequency. And even the way the frequency of the thing was much higher. And that's when you have people having mystical experiences. So I found this was really great. This is called the shoestring theory, right? How all souls are connected. In other words, occupy physics, right? That a little humor would be great, right? So what is matter? And then he goes on and he says, it is the interwoven and united with each other. It's like, and here's some graphics that were done by scientists who are trying to show this interweaving and united with each other, like how energies are connected, the string theory and the atoms and electrons, and the way that they're all connected. So all that is composed shall be decomposed. Everything returns to its root. Matter returns to the origin of matter. What is the origin of matter? Energy. Because we're all one, right? And those who have ears, let them hear. So that's from over 2,000, close to 2,000 years ago, folks. What is that energy? Sound waves. In the beginning was the Word, right? And the Word was with God. So that's another way of saying it. And this is another wonderful quote of Joe's and a foundation of his thing in regard to quantum physics. If we wait for anything outside of us to make us happy, we are not following the quantum law. We are relying on the outer to change the inner. So when you're trying to change matter to matter, it's like struggle, effort, hard work. It can change over time, but it takes time because it's done in the dimension of time. So when we wait for anything outside of us to make us happy, then we are not following the quantum law. We are relying on the outer to change the inner. So this is one of the pages that I thought was so apropos. It's page 12. Now 11 through 16 are missing according to, or 15 are missing according to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene based on the actual papyrus that we have. But this was channeled from the secret teachings of Mary Magdalene. And what it says is that it is with the vision of the nous that we overcome the without in. To me, it's like, how fitting is that? We overcome the without within. We have to go within to make a change, because that's where God resides. That's where we are connected to source. The Father within does the work, right? So of course she had to have learned this, and this is what she knew. That's why she went to Jesus and she said, I had a vision. And I saw the teacher. I saw you, Jesus. And who is the teacher? The teacher is the one who did the work, the Father within. He's the one who knew that he was one with God. And because there was no doubt in his mind, he was free from ego separating him. He is in the state of oneness. Therefore, he was involved in infinite possibilities. So that's why miracles could happen without any problems. The Course in Miracles also validates this, because it also says the body's eyes see separation and only the past. And to know oneness comes from a vision of our divine mind. So if we want to know our oneness, if we want to have the true knowing, the gnosis, which is what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is, a Gnostic teaching, we have to know oneness. And so we have to stop looking with our body's eyes. Because when we see with our body's eyes, what do? We see only below the line. And in order to get above the line, what do we have to do? We have to start having true vision. We have to start seeing by looking within and seeing the vision. What is the vision? He says, Joe says that, when people wake up, half the time they don't have a vision for their future. So they wake up and they immediately go to the problems of the below the line problems. And then they wonder why their life doesn't get any better, because that's what is driving the creation of their reality, instead of going into the visioning. And this is a comment that Jean Leloup, who translated the Coptic version of the Gospel of Mary, where it was discovered as Coptic, and then he translated it to French. And he says, the teacher himself made it clear. Your happiness is the consequence of your actions. Remember, Joe was talking about actions, and your actions are the consequences of your choice. What you do takes you further away from your true nature, because you're below the line. You're not looking at your true nature. You're not embracing your true nature. So vision of oneness happens in the gamma brainwaves area that's why we have to meditate, because that's how we're able to elevate ourselves into a brainwave coherent state and have this kind of mystical experience. It moves us out of the past and detaches us from matter. And you remember back in the beginning, we talked about what is the first things? Attachment to matter is one of our primary problems, right? So you can go back and watch this later again, and you'll see it all there. So we have to understand.
A little bit about brainwaves. You ready? You geniuses? Beta brainwaves. When you are waking consciousness, and you wake up in the morning, and your eye starts to perceive daylight, the moment your eye picks up daylight, the optic nerve sends a signal right to the pineal gland, and the pineal gland begins to make a neurotransmitter called serotonin. And serotonin, neocortex, begins to slow its brain waves down, and your brain waves move into alpha. And in alpha, that's the imaginary world where the inner world is more real than the outer world. You could still hear the outer world, you could sense it, but more of your attention is in the inner world. How many people are with me? Now, if you allow your body to fall asleep and your mind is awake, that's called theta. That's what I call twilight. Now, if you condition your body to be the mind, and your body is now asleep, it means it's no longer the mind, which means instantaneous change can happen. And when we studied our students in long meditation, we see these huge bursts of theta, really long, profound bursts of theta, and they are in the netherworld. And their body is resting, and their mind is awake. They're dreaming in that state. Now, if you miss that window and you miss that door, you move into delta. And delta is deep restorative sleep. Now, every now and then, we see this in our work a lot of times, you'll see what we call gamma brainwaves. Now, I call gamma brainwaves super consciousness. And when that kundalini energy that's sitting in those lower centers that you use for sexual expression, to digest your food, all the energy you need to drive aggressively or tell your coworker off or being chased by a predator, all the energy that's sitting in these lower centers, instead of being eliminated out, begins to move up. When that energy begins to move up, that sympathetic nervous system switches on right with the parasympathetic nervous system, and the body is relaxed, And just like an orgasm, that energy begins to release up into the brain. And there's a little gate at the brain stem called the thalamic gate. And the moment that gate opens up, that energy begins to move right into the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is sensitive to pressure. And all of a sudden, that pineal gland gets a rush of energy and it compresses and it begins to release electromagnetic energy. And the pineal gland begins to take melatonin and turn it into some very profound neurotransmitters. And we have measured amplitudes of energy in our work 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 26,000 times, 40,000 times normal in the brain. And that's because when that neurotransmitter is released and that electrical current begins to activate the nervous system, all of a sudden you're tuning in to possibility. And now the brain and nervous system is processing a greater stream of consciousness. And those microtubules in the cells turn on. If you take that same molecule, tweak it again, you'll find the most powerful hallucinogenic known to man. Now, why is that important? Because the moment that occurs in gamma, what you're experiencing in your inner world is more real than anything you've ever experienced in your outer world, and you'll never forget that moment. And the brain literally tracks it neurologically and produces a new chemical, and the moment that occurs, the body moves out of the past. We have seen people heal themselves instantaneously when this energy is released. So then, gamma then is super consciousness. It's when the sympathetic nervous system begins to release energy back to the brain, and all the energy you've used to create a baby, to digest food, to run from a predator, now moving up to the brain from whence it came. And when that occurs, the brain goes into a heightened state. That's called gamma.
So I just want to insert here that when Magdalene actually achieved that gamma state, because she was doing the inner work and she reached that point where she was able to vision and know that she was one with God. After that experience happened to her, she went to Jesus. And that's what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is telling us the story about. She goes to Jesus and she says, I had a vision. I saw the teacher. It was like the teacher representing the oneness, the face of God, that I knew I was one with God. And so she's explaining her gamma state to Jesus. And then he looks back at her and goes, oh my God, because he can tell from looking at her, something has shifted, something has changed. So there you have it, folks. That's why we meditate, right? Or move into doing that inner work. And this after. So we're going to actually go through a process of taking inspiration. We're going to remember the time that we were feeling this joy, this peace, this love, so that we can begin to identify our vision and move into an elevated state with our vision. So I want to show you one more clip of Joe talking about becoming the elevated state of emotion. This is being in spirit, inspiration, and why you want to access it with something that's above the line. And some of you may be thinking, oh, I have a vision of what I want to do. Great. But some of you may think, oh, I don't even know what my vision is. It's okay. You can pick anything that you want above the line. So if you want more clarity, or if you want abundance, anything from above the line you can pick that. So we're going to just learn a little bit about what he has to say about the elevated emotions.
Well, think about this. The number one feeling that we feel when our life begins to change, or we begin to have feedback from our environment that what we're doing inside of us is producing an effect outside of us. The most common emotion that we feel is a love for life, a joy for existence, grateful, a real deep sense of gratitude. Now think about the emotional signature of gratitude. The emotional signature of gratitude means that something has already happened. When you receive something, or when you're given something, or you are in the process of receiving or have received it, you give thanks. So the moment you start feeling this emotion of appreciation and thankfulness, you will automatically say, thank you. which means I've just received something. I'm acknowledging that I'm receiving it from you. So most people live their lives waiting for something outside of them to change how they feel inside of them.
See, and we're not going to do that, right? Because we're going to go right into what it is that we want to have, not waiting for it, but actually learning how to be it. So, oops.
Well, think about it.
So let's go through one last section of the word. See, we're still just on these. We're doing 7 and 8, and we haven't even gotten to 6, or we have so much. And you see how much is here. The teacher answers a question. There is no sin. If you make sin exist when you act according to the habits of your corrupted nature, you making sin exist. And what did Joe say? It's the thoughts you think. So when you thinking that I'm a sinner or that I've done something wrong, and when you act according to the habits, so it's your actions, right, of your corrupted nature, it becomes habitual. And this is where we get attached to matter, because we're so conditioned to feeling bad, to thinking we're bad, to not feeling worthy, to not being willing to step into joy, that this has corrupted us. So that's why we don't have really powerful, sacred, holy women. I mean, we have some who have awakening, and more of us are beginning to awaken. But it's a really tough thing for women to awaken, because, you know, when you think about it, when my mother was born, we didn't even have the right to vote. So we were considered property and owned by the men. And we didn't get money in our own names until I was in my early 20s. And so for a lot of us, we're habituated, and this has corrupted our experiences of our true nature. So this is why Magdalene's saying, or Jesus is saying, this is why the good has come into your midst. It acts with the elements of your nature, of your true nature, right? It acts together with the love that you are, the peace that you are, so as to reunite it with its roots. So what are the roots of matter? What is the origin of matter? Remember we talked about going back to the origin? Being energy, higher frequency, love and light, right? And this is why you become sick and why you die. It's a result of your actions that take you further away from your true nature instead of bring you towards your true nature, right? So what is taking you further away from your heart? No, you want to move towards your heart. You want to get above the line, right? And be in love. So what is your vision? What is the thing that makes your day, that gives you joy, that brings you peace? This is your vision, so that you may overcome what is within you, so that you can do this. Joe says that when a person starts feeling the emotions of their future, in that instant, their heart begins to respond very differently. So when you tap in to the truth of who you are and allow yourself, remember, allowing bumps you automatically up into the above the line state. This allows you to begin to respond very differently, and things begin to open up. So we take that vision. You need to identify what is your vision. And then we take inspiration. What experience have you had that you've manifested, that you've already had it, or you've longed for it, that's a part of your true nature? Because I can choose fear or I can choose love. I think I'll choose love. I think I'll do the loving thing. I think I'll forgive, right? So then you go into that state. So what is your vision? That's what we need to know. All right. So, well, you guys just witnessed my vision coming true, to be able to have the opportunity to extend and share this wonderful information. I hope you enjoyed that and found that insightful. And, you know, we've just barely I mean, we're just a couple pages in. We're not even, I mean, to me, there's so much richness in that. If we can just do what they're talking about. Really, the work of the Magdalene is bringing forth in front of you so that you, when you arise and awake in the morning, your vision of being heaven on earth, living in an enlightened state of the higher frequencies has to come bubbling up forefront, present with you. And then you step into your vision, and then your vision, you watch magical things will begin to happen. Synchronicities will start happening. The person that knows how to direct you to the healing you need will be there. And the teacher appears right when the student is ready. So it's a very simple but very wonderful process. So, and there's more mysticism awaiting us all, including me, because I never know what she's going to do with me. I'm excited and looking forward to it. In the beginning, when I bring Joe Dispenza on and I say, Joe Dispenza, meet Mary Magdalene, she would have been your A student. I caught myself afterwards, and I was going to say something, but it was like, she wasn't an A student. She was the leader.